Listen, I love The Expanse as a show and as a series of books. I really do. It's probably my favorite show of all time, considering that I am thinking about watching it for the fourth time in its entirety over the course of the past 365 days. And I have a lot of other shows that I want to be watching also, but this one is still at the forefront of my mind. It is the epitome of science fiction in television. Nothing even comes close, in my opinion. And it's not just the cool sci-fi elements, it's not how great the plot is, it's also the complex politics of the world and the interpersonal relationships. Well, I mean, you know, with the exception of one very particular kind of interpersonal relationship. I mean, you've read the title, you know what I'm talking about. The Expanse's romance plots are bloody awful. I'm sorry, but it's true, they're just bad. Not all of them, of course. The main one with Naomi and Jim, that one is fine, even though it does come out of nowhere in the show, not quite as much out of nowhere in the books. I'm going to be talking about the books, by the way, so maybe spoiler alert. I'm only going to be really talking about this one. The one where the show also is. Maybe some events that happen later I will also mention, but none of them are actually plot points. But for all the fine ones, we get Miller and Julie, or Elvie and Fayez. I mean, what the hell? So Miller, who is a disillusioned cop, the kind of character that I do like very much because he plays into tropes in a very interesting way, he gets obsessed with this girl who is half his age because he's getting paid to kidnap her. That is weird. He justifies this obsession by wanting to, save her, and it turns out that she does need saving because the people she was relying on kind of abandoned her. But he's still kind of a creepy stalker, considering that he travels across the vast emptiness of space to meet a woman that he has never met before and who is not even aware of his existence. Now, this could have been very interesting if it had been properly resolved. If at the end she'd have said, who the fuck are you right now? And why are you, alive in this asteroid thing? And he'd realized that he'd been hunting this idealized specter of a person that he never actually knew. Well, that would have been interesting if he still sacrificed himself to save the world. But instead, he just gets the girl. Just consider this, right? He's been dreaming about her for weeks and months. He's built up this very specific idealized image of her that he has from being able to access her personal data by breaking into her home and violating her privacy. Which, he is a police officer doing a semi-official investigation, I suppose. But she says specific things to him in his fantasies, you belong with me. This is something that is a specific thing that he has in his head. This is kind of weird, but okay, it might just be an interesting character trait, I thought as I first watched the show. But then at the end, when he meets the not actual real Julie, but the magical proto-molecule simulacrum that has been created of her, when he meets her for the first time, she immediately becomes the person he has fantasized about. Now, does this make sense in the sci-fi context of the show? Sure, probably it does. He took off the mask, he breathed in the proto-molecule, he is now part of the larger proto-molecule collective that is the asteroid Eros that they are on. She has his memories, she's the seed crystal of that network. So she knows all of his fantasies, and frankly, her weird alien nature might explain why she doesn't get weirded the hell out by that. But it's just so uncomfortable. Right, Miller worked hard for this, and then he ends up getting the relationship, but he didn't work hard at the relationship, he worked hard at chasing down someone who, I mean, ultimately did want to be found, but for completely different reasons. He didn't even do the nice guy thing where he invests nice points and then expects to be rewarded for that. This isn't how people work. This isn't how people are supposed to work. Sure, it makes the proto-molecule look a little more alien, but I don't think that was really necessary. In fact, the interpersonal weirdness of the situation is so grating that it draws away from the alienness of it all, of this human moment, ultimately. Then there's the other one, the one that they were smart enough not to include in the show, but still made a reference to in a way that kind of made me cringe. Yep, it's Elvie and Fire's time. So in this book, Sabola Burn, right, a big part of Elvie's story is how she develops a crush on James Holden while he is down on Eyeless. And yes, I still call it Eyeless and not Illis because it turns out that I have both ears and empathy. It's heavily lampshaded that this crush has massive schoolgirl qualities, and Elvie isn't too proud of it herself. She's kind of irritated by it. The way that she stumbles over her words and like dreams about him, and every time they accidentally touch, it's like she gets this rush. She knows this is weird and she doesn't like it, and it could have been a very interesting exploration of those kinds of feelings. In fact, for the most part of the book, it was. But then it kind of stops being that. Like a lot. So in the beginning of the book, there's this guy who has a crush on Elvie. Ironically, he gets crushed when the ship crashes onto the planet's surface. And strapped in next to her is your boy Fias, with whom she has a conversation about how this guy has a crush on her. And he essentially goes, yeah, what a loser just having a crush on you. Just a losery guy. And then, throughout the entire rest of the book, Fias continues to send her no signals at all that he is very much interested in her. Like, none. The best that you can read out is that he's having some emotional problems and he's not telling her what it is. So, I mean, you can sort of Sherlock Holmes that shit together if you are genre savvy a bit with, you know, literally all of literature. But in a real interpersonal relationship, kind of a weird gambit that he would expect her to figure that out. And then at the end, when they're all blind, she confides in him about the crush she has on James Holden. And he quite angrily declares that all she needs to do is get laid so she stops having this celebrity crush. And it's true that she hasn't been with anyone in years, because, like, she decided not to over the vast traversion of the big distance that is space. Other people that worked with her didn't make that choice. They chose to actually be with people. And it is true that human beings, when they never get, like, bodily affection or are never with someone involved, it doesn't even have to be romantically, they can get weird with wired to want that shit. But instead of going, that's an interesting thing that is also very weird that you just said, Elvie just goes, well, but whom should I give the coochie to? And Fires essentially goes, well, me, bitch. I'm right here. I have a massive crush on you, and I am actually also just terribly in love. Like, it's way beyond a crush at this point. And she's just like, okay, you must be correct then. And they bang, and her crush on James Holden goes away, and the two of them end up getting married. This isn't how humans work. Humans do not function in this manner. Now, don't get me wrong, Elvie and Fires make a great couple. I like the way that their relationship develops over the course of the books, even if we don't see terribly much of it most of the time. They're interesting characters of their own, and they make a very good team. She's the genius breadwinner. Fires supports her with his sense of humor and his unconditional love. And that's kind of the weird thing about how people get into relationships in this show. The relationships themselves tend to be, like, good and well written. So in the very beginning, when Holden is way more invested in the Navigator than she is in him because they're banging, that's interesting. His relationship with Naomi, which is something that is explored quite a lot, how they learn to understand each other's moods even though they are quite different people, and how they admire each other's skills and abilities. I love it. It's cute. It's tremendous. Christian Avasarala and Arjun, also great. The Machiavellian, hardcore but with the heart of gold politician that just tortures people for a living, essentially, and her soft-spoken and sweet poetry professor husband. And I'm sure that Julian Miller would have also made a great team if they hadn't, you know, died. But the way that people get together in this show and these books, it's just weird. It's just guys getting the girl even though the girl knew nothing about them or their affection in like a sudden moment of passion. And I mean, is this possible that it happens in the real world? It absolutely is possible. It's happened to me the other way around, but it's rare. And then to have it happen just always? What the fuck? And it's not like the authors can't do it, right? In the books, the relationship of like Jim and Naomi is built up organically over a long period of time, and she'd had a crush on him for years anyway. Alex's relationship with his ex is an interesting one, as is the one that he eventually develops with one of the temporary crew members whose name I've forgotten. Amos and Chandra Way, the thing that the book only like alluded to, it's also this book, the one where Elvie and Fires happen, because you don't have like the Amos point of view in the books at this point, but you do in the show because they need to cut more often. The show did a very good job at making that happen because these two are very weird but still very similar people. You would expect them to act in this way that isn't exactly normal. But like generally there seems to be a lack of understanding of how romance works in these books. And as great as they are, and as great as all the other aspects of relationships are in these books, I just find it very grating. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. This is great news. I was given a gift yesterday by one of my mods. He made a subreddit that I'm gonna link it down in the description. That's pretty cool. So there's a TheBurgerkrieg subreddit now. No, seriously, thank you, Freest, for doing that. That's pretty dope. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar in these trying times if you can afford to do that. Maybe buying some of my merchandise, that is kind of cool. My short story collection, also if you need some distraction in the quarantine. And in that spirit, like, if you don't know how to romance plot, don't write a romance plot. I know there's this misconception that you have to have one because editors and agents insist that you do, but any book that I read that doesn't have a romance plot in it, I am a big fan of. And see you around, cunts.